What is up, guys? The world of Sword Art Online. Shangri-La is here. Shangri-La Frontier has hit. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and honestly, I can say this show is just a lot of fun. I don't know this show's going to have any sort of deep story, great character development or anything here, but so far what I'm getting is, yes, jokes aside, pretty much Sword Art Online before it just got dumb. This idea of just going into a virtual world and just having fun. And yes, the solo aspect, the idea of somebody just going out on their own and just kind of breaking the game their own way, well, seemingly having some sort of subplot that I think could actually turn into something, but it's just kind of speculation at this point. But yeah, got done with the first 3 episodes, and these are my thoughts on them. Opening up Shangri-La Frontier, we follow a guy named Rakuro, and he is what's known as a garbage game hunter. These are people that, since VR gaming is so big, and there is a lot of games, sounds like our current video game world, just a lot of garbage being thrown out, but he's actually like a type of person that goes out and actively seeks out bad games. Like, he doesn't play the good games, just finds the worst of the worst, the lowest rated stuff, the stuff that's full of bugs, and he finds enjoyment out of beating them, trying to overcome all the glitches and bugs and terrible AI and characters in the game in order to win it. Opening up the show, we get an example of him kind of escorting this princess around, and she's super terrible escort. She does the stupidest things, runs over people with a cart, and at the very end of the game, he beats the boss, and in this little moment where he has like the closing cinematic happening, he decides to turn around and beat the crap out of her because he wanted to get that revenge. After beating the game, he goes back to the shop owner, Mana, and tells her about everything that happened, and then is looking for his next game, and then she decides to tell him, well, there's this great game called Full Dive. I'm just joking. What was it called? Kiwami game. That's right. Kiwami Quest or something like that. That game from Full Dive. That's like the crappiest game ever. I immediately thought of that. That whole scenario of him in the game store and being told by the clerk to play this really crappy, overly realistic game was immediately popped in my head. But no, she tells him about Shangri-La Frontier. Says, hey, you've played the worst. Why not play a good game for once? We find out later that she's sort of trying to push him in the direction of playing this Shangri-La game because this girl from his school really likes him and wants to play a game with him. And she's already had this girl from his school play this Shangri-La game to get really good. That way she can play alongside him. But yeah, he's like, yeah, I guess it's about time to try out one of these games, see what's all the hubbub's about. It's got like 30 million players and everything like that. So he gets the game, goes back home, fires it up, creates his character. There's a lot of emphasis in the idea that he's focusing on like high agility, high luck for crits and stuff like that. Really low defenses. He's a type that likes to have no armor, but yet replace it with really good weapons. It's almost like this idea of being almost a glass cannon, melee glass cannon. But he jumps into the game, immediately fights a bunch of mobs, ends up finding these rare Vorpal bunnies, kills a bunch of them in order to get new weapons. And very quickly, yes, he's realizing, God, this is a god tier game. Like, he's been playing garbage this whole time, and this game is just godlike. Like, your ability to move around, flexibility, no bugs, all this kind of stuff. He's just on cloud 9 at this moment. Eventually, he ends up deciding to completely skip the first town and go straight to the second town, ends up running into this big snake that's at this bridge, defeats the snake solo, goes to the next town because he has to rush there because he gets poisoned and he has to get there before he loses his spawn point and loses all of his gear. He does some mining in order to get some new weapons, new gear, and everything like that, and then eventually he goes out at night in order to fight tougher mobs because at night, typically with these games, mobs are different, they're a lot stronger, and then he ends up running into a unique monster. These are like these very unique monsters. I think they said there's only like 7 of them. Nobody's defeated them. Of course, he ends up running into one of them, fights it for a long time before he's finally defeated, and then he gets cursed by the unique mob. This curse ends up causing it to where he can never wear gear over where the curse is at. He gets increased magical resistance where it's at, and it also changes the responses and how the NPCs interact with him, which he doesn't really know what that means at first, but after he kind of messes with the stats, which he ends up making even more glass cannon of himself, seemingly accidentally, he ends up spotting this little bunny. It looks like a Vorpal bunny, but it has clothes and it's able to talk, and it runs off, and so he chases after it. I think it's like this unique very rare quest that you can run into. He ends up going through this door, which takes him to pretty much the Vorpal bunny world, like a Vorpal bunny town. And there, this bunny ends up inviting him to go talk to their dad / the boss, which is the boss of all these bunnies. And that's pretty much where we leave the 3rd episode. The entire time he's doing all this, we have, of course, the girl from his school is constantly trying to find him. Like, in the 1st episode, she's literally standing at the entrance of the first town, and she's just waiting for him to show up, checking names and everything like that. But then she figures out that, yes, he, defeated the snake and just kind of bypassed the first town. She hears stories from these other 2 about the fact that he came running by with this poison on him. So she's actively just trying to figure out where he's at. And yes, she's she's decked out. She's got like this massive, like really rare gear. Apparently it's supposed to be achievement based. She's a part of this guild that is whole focus is hunting down these unique mobs, even though, again, I think they specify that nobody's defeated the mobs, so I'm guessing they're just still building up. But yes, my thoughts on Shangri-La Frontier so far. It's just a fun show. Like, so far, this show is just kind of fun. And that, yes, that is definitely enhanced by the idea the music's fantastic, the animation is just really, really good. There's a lot of velocity in the characters, a lot of movement, a lot of different camera angles. Studio C2C is just going crazy with the show. And like, if there's a usage of CGI, they are definitely hiding it really well. They probably could have used it for the unique boss, but it was very unnoticeable if it was. Just they're doing a really fantastic job of just giving some great velocity and animation and just epicness to the fight scenes themselves. And again, I think that's partly to do with the fact that a lot of this selling point is going to be on that action. It's a very action-centered show with this kind of tidbits of him essentially exploring this world and in his own way breaking it. The fun thing in Sonraku, which is what he names his character, the fun thing in Sonraku is that he just loves the idea of playing something that gives him ultimate freedom. And with his past pretty much being sort of the... let's just put it in this sense. Essentially, Sonraku, in all of his gaming of really crappy games, has essentially boosted him up. It's like he's done like the most extreme exercises, and now he's going into a world that is, you know, very much so godlike design, that he's got the muscles built up from dealing with the worst of the worst. And it does two different things in the idea that it gives him a lot of skill, it gives him a lot of flexibility, but it also gives him a lot of determination. And the idea that even when he does find the toughest of tough mobs in this new game, stuff that he shouldn't be fighting alone or at the time that he's fighting them, he's got that determination to keep pushing and keep pushing. And plus, with such flexibility in the techniques and what you can do in this new world, he's able to kind of experiment with it and try to figure out what works for him. Again, he kind of boosts nothing but luck and stamina and agility, and so he is a glass cannon. So a lot of his fighting has to rely on dodges, parries, counterattacks, stuff like that, that if he doesn't pull it off perfectly, and with the game being so precise and so well built, it's either death or win. And yeah, since he's very skilled at this whole thing, he's pulling off very well. So it gives a really good explanation as to why he's as good as he is, at the same time showing that he's playing into a lot of risk, which I think in the end will probably be what makes him so special. He's got these Vorpal Bunny daggers that are super rare, and they're really high crit rate. He's got tons of crit already. He's just kind of relying on just hitting those weak points and getting those critical hits. And yes, every single time he's hitting, he's pretty much critting. And I think that's what's going to be what makes him so unique. And I'm guessing with the fact that he's played so many garbage games, it seems to imply this idea that he kind of wants to play solo. So I'm curious if there will be a point where he'll actually start to party with people. Will his friend from his school ever eventually meet him, or is he going to get a part of their guild and try to hunt down these uniques? He has sort of built a purpose in this new world, and that is that once he fights this unique mob, he sort of made it a point that he wants to get back at this thing. He wants to make it his mission to defeat this thing. This is the first thing technically in the game besides the poison that has actually defeated him, and he wants to beat the thing. In his words, it's something that has been designed to beat people, designed to be overpowered, and thus it makes it something that he really wants to overcome. Just like his crappy games that he played. They're designed terribly, and so that's what makes them difficult. In this sense, yes, this has been designed to be difficult, and thus he wants to overcome it. It plays into his desire to beat things that shouldn't be beatable. Now, a story beat that they seem to be implying throughout the series is this idea of how well the AI is designed in this world. Like when he's talking to the shop owner, he's like, wow, this AI is really good. It's incredible what they wrote here. And additionally, with the whole unique mob, when they were showing that whole situation, it cuts over to this building where you see all the servers, which I'm assuming is the Shangri-La servers, and it goes to an empty desk. And then empty desk has a screen where it's applying the unique mobs. So what I'm assuming is that there's going to be a lot of emphasis in the idea of the AI that they've created here is essentially evolving. The AI of the Shangri-La is developing its own scenarios, and this could be a situation of that. It's designed the scenario to fight him. So that could possibly turn to something. I'm like curious of like how much of what is in Shangri-La is technically coded and created, and how much of it is an evolving world based on AI. Is the bunny world with the Vorpal bunnies that he's going to, is this a unique scenario they've only created just for him and maybe a couple other people, which is kind of a lot of coding just for a couple of people? Or is it something that has been created? Like, is this a scenario that is evolving and creating itself? I'd be very curious if that's what the direction they're going to go into, because again, we're so far not going into the realms of something like Sword Art Online where we have to make it intense by saying, oh, well, suddenly everybody can't log out, and so they're all sitting there locked into the game, and if they die in the game, they die in real life. It doesn't have to do that. I hope they don't do that. I have no assumption they will do that. Just a curiosity of what will actually make it have some sort of weight to it, which honestly, I don't necessarily think any show has to do. I think, honestly, things like Dot Hack and Sword Art, all those games have sort of created this expectation that we have to create tension in a virtual world by making something of a loss that can come from it. And so far, what Shangri-La has done is prove to me that you can have something like this that is entertaining despite not having those aspects. And yes, partly to do with the fact that it has really incredible animation. It's got great mechanics and world building so far, and I think it can pull that off just by doing this. Thankfully, we have 2 cores to really get into something interesting, and I think what that interesting thing is going to be, and like I said, is the advancement in AI, and what I think is probably going to be the AI creating these scenarios, and it's all kind of centered around the idea of him fighting this unique mob. But yeah, outside of that, the girl from his school, hopefully eventually she'll run into him. I feel kind of bad. She's kind of walking around and seemingly kind of seeing all of his achievements without him being there. But no, I think the MVP of this show so far is Mia. I actually get a massive kick out of Mia. Like, every time they show this random adventure guy that Rakuro ended up running into when he was trying to get to the inn. And he runs by this couple, and it's this guy that somehow managed to get this girl that he likes to play the game. And she immediately sees Sanraku and says, "Oh, is that a monster?" and goes to shoot it. And he's like, "No, wait, that's a player. You don't do that, otherwise it'll put a skull next to your name and flag you." And then eventually, later on, we run into them again, and it's the girl from his school looking for Sanraku. And at some point, Mia goes to shoot her too. I'm like, this girl just really wants to shoot people in this game. Like, this Mia girl is... If at some point she doesn't turn into like a PvPer at some point, I'd be super shocked. So this girl's like she's just bloodthirsty, I think. But yeah, so far, a lot of fun. I won't claim this show has some deep story. Nothing's mind-bending right now. It's not doing some crazy character developments. It's just so far kind of just sitting in the idea of discovery. World and discovery. It almost feels like this is wrote by somebody that just loves, MMORPGs and wanted to make their own MMORPG and decided to make it through a story. We see that a lot with a lot of mangakas and light novel writers where they are really into something. You can tell when you're reading it, you're like, they're super into this. Like, Goblin Slayer and Mushoku, it seems like they're very much so into JRPGs and RPGs. And this kind of gave me that sense that somebody that probably really likes MMOs, and this is the game that they want to create, because it's just got a lot of emphasis on a very flexible and realized game world that I think is essentially his character exploring that. And for that, it's doing enough. It's interesting. I think my biggest kind of hang up is going to be what is going to be the main plot point, and will that ruin it or enhance it? That's going to be the big telling thing. And like I said, so far they really haven't revealed that. And maybe this is it. This could be possibly it, but we'll see. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on Shangri-La Frontier. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what you thought of this series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content. I news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more and like this content, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.